Okay, perfect. Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Christy and this is Marley, and this video is going to be a June wrap up. So everything that I read in the month of June, and we got a big fucking stack. I read 8 books in June, which is a lot more than I normally read, but these are the times of Corona, so things are changed and things are different. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the first book I read was My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, and this follows the story of Vanessa, the main character, and how she gets into a romantic and sexual relationship with her high school English teacher, Mr. Strain. So this book follows 2 different timelines. One is when Vanessa is 15 years old and when she and Mr. Strain kind of start their relationship, and you can kind of see the beginnings and how the beginnings of it take hold. And also the second timeline is where Vanessa is she's an adult, late 20s, early 30s, and you're able to see how this sexual abuse and this trauma from her childhood, teen years, are affecting her life today. And you're also able to see, I guess, the 2 different perspectives of her more naive side when she was 15, kind of more innocent and not as matured time of her life, compared to her adulthood, and how she's rationalizing this abuse and how she's rationalizing and processing her trauma. The next book that I read in June was The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. It was fucking splendid. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I would give it more if I could. This story is about 2 black identical twin sisters who live in Louisiana, and they are white passing. So they can go out in public and people see their light skin and they're like, there's 2 white girls. I don't know why I'm explaining white passing to you, but they're white passing. So they leave their small town in Louisiana, and one of them chooses to really lean into this white passingness and lives her life as a white woman, whereas the other sister does not. And so you can see differences of, how both of their lives pan out, how certain sisters get certain things because of the race that they chose to present. So this book is told in a few different timelines, and it also jumps from one character's perspective to another character's perspective to another character's perspective. Anyway, it jumps a lot, and Britt Bennett does it in a way where you don't feel bogged down by any of it. It's never too much to keep track of or too much to handle in any way. I felt as I was reading it, even though we did jump from sister to sister to another character to another character and across timelines, I was still invested, and I cared about all these characters, where to the point where when we jumped back to their narrative, I was still interested in catching up with them and seeing how they were doing and all that. I would say that this book was more character driven for me. There are parts where I definitely cared about the plot and I wanted to know what was going to happen next, but at the end of the day I cared more about all of the characters, actually, and just making sure that they were going to be okay and happy and safe. The next book that I read was The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, I think. And people like this book, and so did I. But let me tell you what it's about first. Okay, so The Silent Patient is about Theo. He is a therapist, and he gets a job at a mental hospital where one of his patients is a woman who has been accused of killing her husband. And since the instance in which she has been accused of killing her husband, she has not spoken. She's been silent. So the book is about, Theo working with her and trying to get her to talk, not necessarily to prove that she's innocent or guilty or anything like that, but just kind of to understand what went on that night, what happened the night that she killed her husband. So interesting enough plot. There's a twist, as many thrillers have a twist, and I felt bamboozled. I felt tricked. Not in the way that, you know, mystery writers and thriller writers are supposed to trick you and, like, you know, that is their job. But it felt like it was such a twist that I did not see it coming, that I felt like when I got to it, it was not even like a reality to me that this could happen. And so I felt bamboozled and I felt stupid. But aside from that, it was a damn fine book. The next book that I read in June was The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, and it was fantastic. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I loved it. This book is about Elwood. He is a 15, 16-year-old boy growing up in Florida during the civil rights movement. He, unfortunately, is sent to a juvenile reform school after an incident. And things are not great there. It is actually very bad. I don't know what the image that comes into your head when you think boys' reform school in Florida in the 60s, but it's not good. So bad things are happening there. There's like physical abuse, there's sexual abuse. Not good. So I'm not going to say like too much about what happens. I would say this book for me was definitely more character driven than plot driven. There are like little things that are happening throughout the book, but like at the end of the day, I cared about Elwood and I cared about his classmates and his friends, just more than anything. So much so that at the end, a twist comes that I was not expecting. This book is not like a mystery or a thriller at all, and so the twist that was there broke my heart, and that's all I will say about it. The next book I read was an audiobook called Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. It was so beautiful. I did this one as an audiobook and the author narrates it. I would like 10 out of 10 like hella recommend you listening to the audiobook. It was so good. First of all, the writing was like just like fucking chef's kiss, fucking impeccable. The way that the author narrated the audiobook was just so good. I think that if I had read like the physical book, like the descriptions and the poeticism would still have affected me in the same way, but having her like say it in like the tone and the pace that she intended it for it to be was just like so beautiful. Oh, I guess I should tell you what this story was about. There's 2 girls, one lives in the Dominican Republic, one lives in New York City, and they don't know about each other at all. But they come to find out that each other exists when their father dies in a plane crash. So their dad has been flying, back and forth, and other people in these girls' lives know about each other, and they know that their dad had another daughter, but these girls don't know it at the time. And it really grapples with grief, betrayal, loss, forgiveness, all while they're trying to comprehend the fact that they have a sister, and their dad isn't there to explain the situation to them. It was perfect. I loved it. That's all I'll say on that. The next book that I read this month was I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. I gave this a fucking 5 out of 5. It was fantastic. This was a psychological thriller horror novel that I knew nothing about going into. Literally, I did not know anything about what it was about. And so I don't know what to say about it now. Do I tell you some of the plot, or do I just not tell you? Okay, I will say this. It is about a guy named Jake and his girlfriend, and they are going to meet Jake's parents. And then stuff happens. The next book that I read was The Deep by River Solomon, and this was another audiobook listen, and it was fantastic. I just kept getting great books this month. So this novel is about a pod of mermaids who live underwater, as you know mermaids do, and they are descendants of pregnant African women who were thrown overboard on slave ships. There is one mermaid in particular who is in charge of holding all of the memories for the mermaids, and there's like a certain time where she shares the memories with the other mermaids, and they get to experience their like history and the trauma of their ancestors. And so it was just a beautiful story. I really loved it. I listened to the audiobook, which narrated by David Diggs. Perfect velvet in my ears. And I wish I kind of would have read it in like a hard book, because there were some parts that were so descriptive and so beautiful and so poetic that, yeah, I could rewind and have David Diggs say it to me again. And I did sometimes, but it would have been really nice to like take it in for myself at my own speed. So it was great. And then the last book that I read was Stamped by Jason Reynolds and Ibram X. Kendi. So this little guy is adapted from Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. Stamped just goes through the history of racism and how it came to be, and it does it in such an accessible way. I think this book was written for like young adult, high school age kids, and there's some parts that are like kind of corny and cheesy and reflect that, but it's also like is so accessible. Like I think anyone could read this and grasp the concepts and understand how historical like events and how things that happened in the past shape like racism now, and how it shapes like how we view race as a whole. One thing that I did like about the book was that it like broke the fourth wall of literature. So the author would like say something that happened, like a historical event that was like clearly racist or something, and he'd explain it, and then he'd be like, yeah, that's really racist, right? And it just felt like the whole time he was just talking to me. So if that is your thing, you will like this book. And even though it is like written for high schoolers and young adult people, I think everyone should read it. So that's my take on that. So yeah, that is what I have. These are the books that I read this month. I really lucked out by getting just like a shit ton of like grand slam all around great books, which doesn't happen every month. So we'll see what next month brings. Let me know what you're reading, what you read this month, what you plan to read next month. Let me know if you like this video and if I should do it again. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye. I don't know how to describe this book. It was just good.